In the 3rd century, in the great city of Antioch, then one of the most important centers of the Roman Empire, lived a man whose name would echo through centuries as both a warning and an inspiration: Cyprian of Antioch. Born around the year 250 into a wealthy pagan family, possibly of Carthaginian origin, Cyprian was dedicated from his earliest childhood to the service of the ancient gods. His parents, seeing in him exceptional intelligence, consecrated him at the age of 7 to the temple of Apollo in nearby Daphne, famous for its oracle and sacred grove. By the age of 10, he was sent to Mount Olympus to serve Artemis, learning the rites of hunting, illusion, and lunar mysteries. These early initiations were only the beginning of a lifelong journey through the esoteric traditions of the Mediterranean world. As a teenager, Cyprian traveled to Argos to participate in the Dionysian mysteries, ecstatic rites involving wine, theater, and the invocation of frenzy. He studied in Taurus, where legends spoke of human sacrifice to Diana, absorbing dark rituals tied to blood and shadow. In Chaldea, the ancient heartland of astrology in Babylon, he mastered the interpretation of celestial omens, learning how the movements of planets and stars could be used to predict and influence human affairs. He spent years in Egypt, particularly Memphis, where priests taught him the secrets of serpent charming, the invocation of underworld spirits, and the hidden properties of the Nile's sacred animals. Archaeological discoveries from this era, including magical papyri from Egypt and curse tablets from Antioch, confirm the existence of such practices. Hybrid Greco-Egyptian spells blending invocations to Thoth, Hermes, and local daimons. By his 20s, Cyprian had been initiated into the Mithraic mysteries in underground temples across the empire, ascending through the 7 grades involving blood baptisms and cosmic symbolism. He studied Platonic philosophy in Athens, blending intellectual speculation with practical thaumaturgy, the art of performing wonders. In Syria, he delved into local traditions of demonology, commanding intermediate spirits that bridged the material and divine realms. Returning to Antioch, a cosmopolitan crossroads of Greek, Roman, Persian, and emerging Christian influences, he established himself as a professional sorcerer of unparalleled reputation. Clients from the nobility sought him for love philters that bound hearts with unbreakable desire, curses that ruined enemies through illness or misfortune, talismans for political power, and divinations revealing hidden treasures or future events. His sanctum was filled with scrolls in Greek, Latin, Coptic, and Hebrew, tools like black mirrors for scrying visions, altars for offerings of incense, blood, and rare herbs gathered under specific lunar phases. Historical accounts preserved in early Christian texts, such as the 4th century Greek Confession of Cyprian, and later versions in the Golden Legend compiled by Jacobus de Voragine in the 13th century, portray him as capable of summoning phantoms in daylight, healing incurable diseases through incantations, commanding animals, and even influencing weather. Yet this power came at a profound cost. The legends emphasize that Cyprian had made pacts with infernal hierarchies, offering oaths and sacrifices in exchange for dominion over spirits. In Antioch, where grand temples to Jupiter, Astarte, and Apollo dominated public life, while Christians met secretly amid growing persecution under emperors like Decius, Cyprian viewed the new faith with contempt, as a delusion for the weak and uneducated. He operated openly, his arrogance growing with every success. Pagan festivals filled the streets with processions and sacrifices, while underground house churches shared stories of a crucified teacher who promised eternal life. Symbolically, Cyprian's early life embodies the archetype of the learned magus at the height of Hellenistic syncretism, brilliant, ambitious, and dangerously entangled with forces the emerging church condemned as demonic. His travels reflect the diffusion of esoteric knowledge across cultures, from Hermetic texts to Chaldean oracles. This foundation of mastery set the stage for a confrontation that would challenge everything he believed. In the same city, a young pagan noble named Aglades became obsessed with a Christian virgin named Justina, whose faith would prove stronger than any spell Cyprian could weave. Justina was born into a pagan family in Antioch, her father Aedesius a priest of idols, her mother Cladonia devoted to the old gods. Yet as a young woman, she overheard Christian preaching on chastity, salvation, and the power of Christ. leading to her secret conversion. She dedicated herself to virginity and constant prayer, even persuading her parents to follow her into the faith. Her beauty and piety became known throughout the city, attracting suitors from wealthy families. Among them was Aglades, a young man of high standing consumed by passionate desire. He pursued her with gifts, promises of marriage, and eventually threats. But Justina remained unmoved, rejecting all advances in favor of her ascetic life. Desperate and frustrated, Aglades sought out Cyprian, now the most famous sorcerer in Antioch, offering a fortune in gold to cast a spell that would force Justina to love him. Cyprian, confident in his abilities and eager to demonstrate the superiority of pagan magic over Christian claims of divine protection, accepted the challenge. He saw it as an opportunity to humble the growing Christian movement that dared oppose the ancient gods. That night, in his ritual chamber prepared with circles of salt, burning incense of myrrh and sulfur, and sigils drawn in consecrated ink, Cyprian began with lesser spirits, daimones associated with lust and illusion from Venusian hierarchies or Syrian entities akin to succubi. He commanded them to infiltrate Justina's dreams, inflaming her with visions of Aglades. The next day, nothing changed. Justina continued her prayers serenely. Intrigued rather than discouraged, Cyprian escalated his efforts. He summoned more powerful incubi capable of physical temptation, crafted potions to be carried on the wind to her home, and manifested seductive phantoms in her presence. Each attempt failed dramatically. The spirits returned terrified, describing an invisible fiery barrier that burned them whenever Justina made the sign of the cross or invoked the name of Christ. Historical texts like the Conversion of Cyprian and Justina, a Greek narrative from the 4th or 5th century, detail these escalating failures vividly, using them to illustrate early Christian apologetics, simple faith triumphing over elaborate pagan sorcery. Refusing defeat, Cyprian invoked higher powers, drawing complex circles with barbarous names of power borrowed from Egyptian, Chaldean, and Solomonic traditions. Still no success. Finally, he undertook the great evocation of the Prince of Darkness himself, a ritual requiring days of fasting, purification, blood offerings at crossroads, and the use of forbidden names. Under a moonless sky, the archdemon manifested in terrifying form, acknowledging Cyprian's past pacts and promising victory. Yet even this supreme entity returned humiliated, unable to approach Justina. The power emanating from her invocations of Christ caused it excruciating pain, forcing retreat. This chain of defeats dismantled Cyprian's worldview. For the first time, he confronted the absolute limits of his infernal alliances. The entities he commanded were subservient to a higher divine authority. Symbolically, Justina represents unassailable purity and faith, creating a spiritual shield no hierarchy of darkness can penetrate. Her story parallels many early martyr tales, emphasizing how the new religion overcame pagan thaumaturgy through simplicity and devotion. Aglades grew impatient, demanding results, but Cyprian, now personally invested and shaken, began questioning everything. The demons he had served for decades revealed their deception when faced with true power. In rage and humiliation, he rebuked the Prince of Darkness, declaring the Christian God supreme. The entity attacked in fury, attempting to strangle him, but Cyprian instinctively made the sign of the cross, the very gesture he had mocked, and the demon fled in terror. This experiential proof propelled him toward the local Christian community, seeking the bishop for baptism, and beginning one of the most dramatic conversions in hagiographic history. The demon's final defeat and retreat marked the pivotal crisis in Cyprian's life. Having rebuked his former master and survived its attack through the simple sign of the cross, Cyprian recognized the supremacy of the Christian God. The legends preserved in Orthodox and Catholic traditions describe this moment as profound humiliation, followed by illumination. The sorcerer who commanded legions now saw their power as illusion before divine truth. Seeking out the bishop Anthimus of Antioch, Cyprian confessed his entire past, decades of pacts, evocations, and sorcery, in exhaustive detail. Initially met with suspicion, he proved his sincerity by gathering all his magical books and scrolls, a vast library accumulated from travels across the empire, and publicly burning them in the town square. Witnesses described a massive pyre that consumed hundreds of texts on Godia, astrology, necromancy, and forbidden invocations. This act symbolized complete renunciation, mirroring broader Christian themes of repentance seen in the Book of Acts, where converts burned their magical books. Baptized soon after, Cyprian's transformation was remarkable. His deep knowledge of pagan rites made him uniquely effective in the church. He advanced rapidly, first deacon, then priest, and eventually bishop of Antioch. His former expertise in demonic hierarchies became a weapon against possession. He performed exorcisms using only prayer, the cross, and the name of Christ, freeing many afflicted individuals who had been tormented by the very spirits he once commanded. Justina, meanwhile, continued her ascetic life, founding or entering a convent dedicated to virginity and prayer. Their paths converged again during the Great Persecution under Emperor Diocletian around 304 AD. Arrested for refusing to sacrifice to pagan gods, both endured torture, whippings, boiling cauldrons, and imprisonment, before being beheaded in Nicomedia. Their relics were later venerated across the Christian world, with feast days established on September 26th in the West and October 2nd in the East. Symbolically, Cyprian's conversion and martyrdom represent redemption's boundless reach. Even one deeply immersed in darkness can achieve sainthood through grace. In medieval and Renaissance iconography, he is depicted holding both a grimoire and a cross, trampling demonic figures beneath his feet, embodying the transmutation of forbidden knowledge into holy wisdom. His story served as a powerful apologetic tool for early Christianity, demonstrating divine superiority over pagan magic. In later centuries, this narrative of triumph over sorcery would ironically give rise to grimoires attributed to Cyprian himself, texts claiming to contain his pre-conversion secrets, framed within Christian language as redeemed knowledge. Centuries after the martyrdom of Cyprian and Justina, beginning in the 17th century on the Iberian Peninsula, a new literary phenomenon emerged: grimoires bearing the name of Saint Cyprian. These were not authentic 3rd century works but pseudopographic compilations, folk magic texts falsely attributed to the saint to lend them authority and legitimacy within a Christian context. The irony is profound. The man who publicly burned his books became the supposed author of some of Europe's most notorious magical manuscripts. The earliest printed editions appeared in Spain and Portugal, blending Catholic prayers, biblical citations, and pre-Christian folk charms. Common themes included prayers for finding hidden treasures, often associated with Moorish enchantments left during the Reconquista, protections against witchcraft, love bindings, divination methods using cards or mirrors, and invocations for health or prosperity. These texts framed magic as compatible with Christianity by beginning with the legend of Cyprian's conversion, presenting the spells as knowledge he mastered before renouncing paganism. One famous Portuguese variant focused heavily on moramas, enchanted treasures guarded by spirits in caves or ruins, requiring specific orations to Saint Cyprian to break the spells. Spanish editions incorporated more astrological elements and talismans. The book circulated widely among rural populations, cunning folk, and even clergy who blurred lines between orthodoxy and practical magic. Symbolically, these grimoires represent cultural syncretism, the merging of official religion with popular beliefs in post-Reconquista Iberia. In a society where Catholic saints were invoked for everyday needs, Cyprian's dual nature as former sorcerer turned bishop made him the perfect patron. His attribution justified the use of magical formulas within a Christian worldview, transforming forbidden arts into white magic under divine sanction. As Iberian explorers and colonists spread to the Americas and beyond, these traditions traveled with them, evolving further in new cultural contexts while retaining the core narrative of redemption through power. The contents of the Iberian books of Saint Cyprian vary widely across editions, but certain patterns emerge reflecting folk concerns of the era. Many begin with the full legend of Cyprian and Justina, using the conversion story as moral justification. Following this are sections on treasure hunting, elaborate prayers and rituals to reveal gold hidden by Moors or ancient kings, often involving midnight workings at ruins with specific psalms and invocations to Cyprian. Other common chapters include protections against the evil eye, curses and witchcraft, prayers to unbind spells using holy water, crosses, and saintly intercession. Love magic appears frequently. Charms to attract partners or bind affections, always framed with Christian language to avoid accusations of diabolism. Divination methods range from chiromancy, palm reading, to hydromancy, water scrying, and geomancy, with instructions for interpreting signs under planetary hours. Health and healing form another major section. Remedies for ailments using herbs blessed with Cyprian's orations, exorcism prayers for possession, and talismans against plague or misfortune. Some editions contain astrological tables for timing workings, lists of angelic and planetary names, and symbolic interpretations of dreams. The most controversial parts involve spirit invocation, commands to lesser entities for practical ends, carefully worded to appear subordinate to divine will. Treasure symbolism runs deep, not just material wealth, but allegorical quests for spiritual enlightenment, guarded by trials much like Cyprian's own journey. These texts circulated in cheap printed forms for mass distribution and expensive manuscript versions for the elite. They influenced rural healers, shepherds, and village-wise women, becoming cornerstones of Iberian folk Catholicism, where saints served practical as well as devotional roles. As the Cyprianic tradition spread beyond Iberia, regional variations highlighted cultural adaptation. In Scandinavia, Norway, Denmark, Sweden, and Iceland, the name Cyprianus became synonymous with black books, or svarteboken. Handwritten manuscripts of folk magic circulated secretly from the 17th to 19th centuries. These contained spells for healing livestock, controlling weather, protecting against trolls or witchcraft, stealing butter from neighbors' cows, and even summoning or banishing spirits. Legends surrounded these books. Some claimed a true Cyprianus could not be destroyed by fire or water, sinking in baptismal fonts or screaming when burned. Contents blended biblical psalms with Nordic runes and pre-Christian charms, attributed to the saint as ultimate source. Recent scholarship, including translations of Danish legends and Norwegian spell collections, reveals dozens of unique manuscripts preserved in museums. In Latin America, particularly Brazil, the tradition absorbed African and indigenous elements through colonization and the slave trade. Editions like the famous capa preta, black cover, or capa de aço, steel cover, incorporated syncretic prayers blending Catholic saints with orixás and spirits from Quimbanda lineages. These adaptations show the fluid nature of esoteric knowledge, evolving to meet local needs while retaining Cyprian's core narrative of power, redeemed through faith. In the English-speaking world, particularly the United States, Saint Cyprian found new life within hoodoo and conjure traditions, African-American folk magic rooted in slavery-era survival practices. Though not part of the original hoodoo repertoire derived from West African spirituality and Protestant Bible magic, Cyprian's adoption grew through cultural exchange with Hispanic and Caribbean communities. In Southern hoodoo and New Orleans voodoo, he is revered as patron of necromancers, root doctors, and those working with spirits. Practitioners invoke him for commanding demons, protection against malevolent witchcraft, locating lost items, and gaining occult insight. Purple candles, symbolizing mystery and authority. Oils and prayers dedicated to him are sold by suppliers like Lucky Mojo, describing Cyprian as the saint who understands both darkness and light. In the United Kingdom, where historical occultism draws from Elizabethan grimoires and figures like John Dee, Cyprian's revival ties into modern ceremonial magic circles. Publishing houses release translations and studies, integrating him with Solomonic traditions. This transatlantic adoption reflects hoodoo's syncretic nature, blending Catholic saint veneration with African diaspora practices, where figures like Saint Michael or Saint Expedite serve similar protective roles. The modern occult revival of Saint Cyprian owes much to scholarly work in the 21st century, particularly Portuguese researcher José Leitão. His 2014 book, The Book of Saint Cyprian, The Sorcerer's Treasure, provided the first comprehensive English translation of a major Portuguese grimoire, complete with extensive commentary revealing cultural context and connections to broader Iberian folk traditions. Leighton's subsequent works, including collections of Cyprianic legends and studies of divination practices, established him as the leading academic voice. In online communities, podcasts, and occult publishing, Cyprian is discussed as a living patron. Practitioners maintain altars with purple cloths, grimoire copies, and images of the saint trampling demons. In American hoodoo, he appears in devotional items for spirit control and unbinding. The digital age has amplified interest. Forums, YouTube channels, and independent presses fuel a growing community that sees Cyprian as bridge between forbidden knowledge and ethical practice. At its core, Saint Cyprian's symbolism centers on redemption. His pact with infernal forces represents ambition's dangers, temporary power at eternal cost. The repeated failures against Justina reveal hierarchical limits, while his conversion illustrates grace's triumph over human effort. The pseudepigraphic grimoires embody humanity's fascination with integrating shadow and light, transforming forbidden arts into tools under divine sanction. His dual imagery, holding both grimoire and gospel, symbolizes transmuted knowledge. Ultimately, the true story behind the grimoire of Saint Cyprian weaves redemption, warning, and wonder, a testament to faith and magic's complex interplay across history. From ancient Antioch to modern hoodoo altars, his legacy endures as patron of those navigating light and shadow, reminding practitioners that transformation is always possible.